Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday, August 30th at just after 8:30 in the morning. We're getting a nice early start on Sunday today with another session on scanning, SQANNING, which is a relaxation technique which utilizes the incremental release of muscular tension to achieve a deep state of physical, emotional, and hopefully mental calm. That's why we're here. We're here today just to practice this technique. Again, it's called scanning. I spell it SQANNING just to distinguish it a little bit, but it's basically a reference to the idea of scanning your body in search of pockets of muscular tension and working to perfect the technique of releasing that muscular tension incrementally, wherever you find it, in a gradual, cumulative way so that your body eventually completely relaxes, completely releases whatever tension you have. This in turn induces a state of release and relaxation in your emotions and primarily your mind, because your mind is a muscle of sorts. If you think about it, it holds on to things, it holds on to thoughts. And as the mind relaxes in response to the muscular relaxation of the rest of the body, it just releases whatever obsessive thoughts or ideas you're having, whatever compulsive feelings you're having, and you come to a place of stillness and calm. And that's what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve calm in this crazy, mad, insane world, right? So, I'll talk a little bit about the theory, but then we'll get right into the practice of it. This concept, which I call scanning, this incremental release of muscular tension, was inspired by a book called The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment by a man named Thaddeus Golas, Golas. You can still get the book. I don't know if you can buy the original edition, which I think is the best, but if you can find it, it's great. And he just talks about the universe being basically broken down into two primary processes. The entire universe: contraction, squeeze your hands together, or expansion, release. Everything can be looked at on Earth, as either in a state of contraction or expansion. And that includes us. Our bodies are basically a contraction of bringing together of materials to form a body. Our thoughts are contractions, bringing together of words and ideas in an effort to achieve a goal or to advance an agenda. So we're either contracted or expanded. And this is great. There's nothing wrong with either of them, contraction or expansion. And typically in life, we vacillate between the two. We either are more contracted or more expanded. We go back and forth. Where we run into problems is when we become overly contracted. Because when you are overly contracted, if you squeeze your hands together, you can see what that feels like. You're rigid, you're tight, you're unyielding, you're holding your breath. You're in a state of perhaps denial or rejection, what I call a state of no. So that's when we're in trouble. And how do we know when we're overly contracted? Well, I'm going to be just as general and as broad as I can be in this topic. You feel bad. You feel bad. When you're overly contracted, you feel bad. You feel restricted. You have obsessive, anxious thoughts. Those are contractions. Your body feels rigid, maybe in pain. These are contractions. So this whole technique is designed to bring us back into balance by bringing us out of a contracted state into a more expanded state. That's all we're doing. My theory being that this contraction-expansion balance is at the root of pretty much every difficulty or problem we have in life. And I know that sounds really quite general and quite broad, but I'm beginning to find that any situation I'm in that I consider challenging, difficult, and pleasant can be helped or improved by expanding, or in a muscular sense, relaxing. So let's try that. This is, for me, an experiment. Life is an experiment. I've been experimenting with this for years. I've found great success. So let's try it and see what it does for us today. Okay, so let's just get started. Squeeze your hands together, tight, 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 tight. That's contraction. Okay, and you do this. We start this practice of scanning by squeezing our hands together basically as a reference point. It's what I call a binary metaphor. It's a metaphor for us, for our entire state of being, our entire state of consciousness. Everything in the universe is generally contracted and sometimes overly contracted. So we squeeze our hands together to say, what does contraction feel like? Well, this is what it feels like. So keep your hands really tightly squeezed. And note how that feels to be very, very contracted, to be holding a state of contraction as tight as you can. It's not necessarily pleasant. You feel rigid. Maybe you're holding your breath. You're not breathing. You feel a little bit tight. You feel a little anxious. You're having to maintain a position, which maybe you'd rather not maintain, but you feel you must. That's contraction. So we start this way to remind ourselves what it feels like to be contracted. And then we say, what do I need to do to expand? Well, it's simple. You just decide to expand. 3, 2, 1, release. And now you note what that feels like. So now what we're seeing by this initial step in this scanning process is a difference. We're setting up a contrast, this binary metaphor. How does it feel to be contracted versus how does it feel, 3, 2, 1, to be expanded? So we've right away physicalized this process. And this is a physical process, scanning. We're taking it out of our heads. I'm not telling you to say a mantra or to think an idea or read a book. I'm not giving you a saying or anything like that. This is a physical process. So we're physicalizing this process so that we can become physically aware of the difference between how it feels to be, contracted or expanded. So let's do it again. Squeeze your hands together, tight, tight, tight. That's how it feels to be contracted. So any issues or problems you're having, any obsessive thoughts or worries you're having are sort of represented by this. When you don't feel happy, perhaps you feel like this, contracted. Okay, so that's what it feels like. That's us. Just reference that for a minute. That's contraction. And stay with that. Because what we're trying to do is understand ourselves. We're trying to understand why we feel the way we feel, why we do the things we do. So let's say this is what it is when we're contracted. So we have the power to bring ourselves out of that. And it's very important that you realize that. Your state of consciousness is completely within your control. How do we go from contraction to expansion? We just decide to do it. 3, 2, 1, release. See how that feels. Taking all the pressure off. I can breathe. Take a deep breath. And another. And one more. And then just sit in stillness and silence for 15 seconds. So I will admit to you here, and this is important that I do this because I take myself through this process with you as I teach it, that I have been in an extremely contracted state of consciousness for the past 24 hours. And I never know exactly why. Maybe there's thoughts of the state of the world, politics, career, job, anything can bring you into a state of contraction. And by that I mean anxious thoughts, compulsive thoughts, dark thoughts. You're pulling in, emotionally contracted. So I have felt that extensively. So my solution is what we're doing here. Take myself out of my head. Remember that I am in a contracted state. That's what's going on. Identify it. Okay? Contracted. Recognize, step 2, that I have the ability to bring myself out of that contracted state. It's simply a choice. 3, 2, 1, release. See how that feels different. Drop your hands. Take 3 deep breaths. Deep breaths are expansive by nature. These preliminary steps are a way of physically dragging yourself out of your contracted state. Deep breaths will pull you out of your contracted state. So take 3 deep, deep breaths. And now sit in stillness and silence for 15 seconds and just register how you feel. You know, there's an old expression, what's the best part about hitting your head with a hammer? The answer is, it feels so great when you stop. Well, contraction is a hammer of sorts. When you're contracted, you're kind of beating yourself up a little bit. You're pulling in, you're bringing in words, obsessive thoughts. You're building a cage around yourself. And the best part about contraction is when you stop, it feels so good. So these steps, again, these are physical ways of dragging yourself out of a state of contraction. And you may say, well, I don't feel contracted. I feel okay. Try taking a series of deep breaths and sitting in stillness and silence. If you feel any resistance to that process, you're probably in a contracted state. And the deep breaths will drag you out of that contracted state on a physical level. So immediately, as I said, with a hammer, I feel better. I feel less contracted. Contraction can be painful. Over-contraction can be painful. You've pulled yourself into a hole that you can't seem to escape. We go into a state of contraction because it is a form of security. It makes us feel safe and protected from the challenges and pain of life, and yet it's actually harming us. So when we pull ourselves out of this contracted state, very simply by releasing deep breathing and sitting in stillness and silence, it can feel really great. So if nothing else, if you take nothing else from this session, I would love for you to remember that if you just take these initial steps, squeeze your hands together to recognize you are in a contracted state. On your count, release. 3, 2, 1, release, to indicate that you have the power to take yourself out of that contracted state. 3 deep breaths to literally drag yourself out of that cave of contraction. Then stillness and silence to stabilize, to find a way to be comfortable with that new state, because coming out of contraction can be very disorienting. It's a little scary and it can be disorienting. The deep breaths may make you dizzy. Again, you're changing states of consciousness quite dramatically and quickly. So when you do it, when you take those deep breaths, we take 15 seconds to stabilize, to sit in stillness and silence. Also, because stillness is the opposite of action, which is a contraction, silence is the opposite of words and thoughts, which are contractions. So these 3 steps, squeeze, release, deep breaths, stillness and silence, literally drag you, jolt you physically out of your state of contraction. So again, if nothing else, if you take nothing else from these sessions, whenever you're in trouble, sit down, say, hey, look how contracted I am. I can change that. 3, 2, 1, release. Take 3 deep breaths. 2. As deep as you can. 3. 15 seconds of complete stillness and silence. And see what that does for you. It's amazing to me. What's even more amazing is that I've been doing this for years and I still forget that I can do this, and it'll help me. So try to remember. We throw up a lot of excuses why we don't want to expand, why we don't want to go through this process, mainly because we're afraid. We take a contracted position as a form of safety and security, and it feels risky to come out of that cave. So don't be surprised if you find yourself saying, I don't want to do this, this doesn't feel good, I don't want to, I don't like this, not now, I'd rather go play video games. Don't be surprised if all of these excuses come popping up. Physically, a physical resistance to this process, don't be surprised. However, once you have dragged yourself out into even the slightest expansion, you'll feel better and you'll want to continue, which I do. And I'm going to reference something which I thought of last night as a sort of example of this. And it might be helpful for you. I'm sure you've heard the story of how a monkey comes to a small jar, and he sees a walnut in the jar, and he's hungry. So it's a very small hole. So he places his hand down in the jar, and he grabs a hold of the walnut. Now, once, of course, the walnut's in his hand is bigger, so he can't get his hand out of the jar. He wants the walnut, but he can't have the walnut and have his hand be free either, both. He can't do it. But he doesn't realize that, so he's sitting, he tugs at it for a while. And at some point he realizes that the only way to get his hand free, the only way to be free is to let go of the walnut. And then his hand is free again. So contraction is sort of having your hand in the jar on a walnut. You got to make a choice. Do you want to be free? Do you want to be free? Or do you want to hold on to that walnut, which in this case is your contracted state, your obsessive thoughts, your anxious thoughts? You have to make a choice. You have to make a choice. And in order to expand, you need to let go. You have to let go. And we don't want to let go. We've got that damn walnut, and we're holding on to it. And that walnut can be anything. That can be any obsessive thought you have. It can be the television we watch, the video games we play, the drugs, unfortunately, we may take, or the drinks we may have. This is the thing we're holding on to. But do you want to be free? You got to let go of that thing. You got to take the chance. You'll find food somewhere else. Let go, pull your hand out, be free. That's expansion. So we're going to do this 2 more times, and then we're going to move into what I call the nuts and bolts of the technique, which is the incremental muscular release. If contraction is best exemplified by the muscles, because they can either contract or release, then it's best to use the muscles to bring our body into and our mind into an expanded state. And we're going to do that next. Let's just try these preliminary steps one more time, just to remind yourself. If you're in trouble in some way, if you're disturbed, if you feel bad, just take these 3 preliminary steps. Okay, here we go. I'm going to do them again. Squeeze your hands together to remind yourself, I am in a contracted state. This is what it feels like, and hold it tight. That's you. Now you've taken the pressure off your mind, you've taken the pressure out of your heart and soul, and you put it in your hands, okay? It's all here, so you can study it and look at it. So say, that's me, and squeeze tight and see what that feels like. Do you want to stay there? No, it doesn't feel good. You feel bad. You have the power within you, we all do, to control our own state of consciousness. It's up to us. And that's one of the great things about this technique is it reminds you it's all within your control. So let's make that choice. 3, 2, 1, release. Completely release. And see how that feels. I'm free. I let go. Drop your hands. Take this time 5 deep breaths. 2, 3, 4. As deep as you can on 5. 30 seconds of complete stillness and silence. If you feel dizzy, that's fine. Remember, you're changing states of consciousness. It can be rough seas. Adjust. 30 seconds. Deep breath. So I want you to remember that, if you can. Remember that image of the monkey holding onto the walnut. He can't get his hand free unless he lets go of the walnut. When you're scanning, when you're going through this process, your mind is going to keep trying to drag you back to those obsessive thoughts, to those compulsive feelings. But I want to do this, but I got to go do that, but I can't stop thinking about this. That's you holding on to that walnut. You can't expand while you're contracting. You can't contract and expand at the same time. That's the beauty of this technique. Once you begin to expand, you've stopped contracting. You can't contract and expand at the same time. So as long as you can keep expanding, you're moving away from contraction, but you're going to have to let go. You're going to have to let go. You're going to have to make that choice. I have to do it every day when I do this process. I'm thinking about something, I can't let go of it. I try to expand, but the contraction keeps pulling me back. But you can't expand while you're contracting, and you can't contract while you're expanding. So let go. Make that choice. So now we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of the technique, which is the actual muscular release. Again, muscles are the perfect metaphor for this contraction expansion idea. Muscles can only contract or release. As we learn to relax the muscular tension in our body, we are teaching ourselves to expand. This physical expansion will influence your entire state of consciousness and ultimately your mind. Again, if you think of the mind as a muscle of sorts, it's holding on to obsessive thoughts, maybe negative thoughts, compulsive thoughts. It can't let go. As you release the muscles, you will find your mind will be influenced. It will be drawn into this expansive change. It will relax, it will let go, and these obsessive thoughts, compulsive thoughts will just drift away, and you will find yourself in a place of calm, quiet, clarity, peace, stillness, and joy. This is where we're headed. This is where we need to go. In a completely expanded state, you have no opinions, you have no thoughts, you have no compulsions, you have nothing but your state of being. This is where we're trying to get to. Not all day. We can't live there. We have careers, we have relationships, we have challenges we have to face. We move into our compulsive positions, into our contracted position to take care of business, to take care of life. What we're trying to find is a way to get at least once or twice or 3 times a day to a place of calm, centered peace. It allows us to recuperate. It clears our mind so that we can more effectively return to our activities with greater clarity, with greater effectiveness. You can do your job more effectively. You can be in your relationships more effectively. You know why we forget how to listen, which is one of the most damaging things to a relationship? We've got too much contraction. We're forming our own thoughts so rapidly, our own ideas so obsessively. There's no room to hear what someone else is thinking. When you clear your mind, when you come to this still, quiet, empty, neutral place, all there is what there is. So when someone says something, you hear it. And you can respond and maybe help them and help the relationship. So here we go. We're moving into the physical expansion now. This is the nuts and bolts of the technique. We're going to incrementally release the muscular tension in our body. And we're going to start by working on different zones. We're going to break the body down because it's easier to focus on a certain area. And we're going to start with the face. We really started with the hands. 3, 2, 1, release. That sensation of release, that's what we're going to try to do all over our body. And we tend to hold a certain low level of tension throughout our entire body all day, 24 hours a day, that you're not even aware of. So you're going to find pockets of tension you didn't even know you had. Many benefits to releasing them. One of them being you expend less energy. Holding tension in your body requires energy, and we wonder why at the end of a day we're exhausted when maybe we've just been sitting at a desk all day. It's because we've been holding this low level of muscular tension that requires energy. You don't need to do that. You don't need to be always holding that tension. So let's get rid of it. The face. On my count, I want you to release the tension in your face, and you'll see my face drop as if I turned off the switch. That's why I snap my fingers. 3, 2, 1, release. So that sagging sensation, that sensation of release, that turning off of the power to the muscle is what we're going to try to do throughout our entire body. So do the face. 3, 2, 1, release. And study what that feels like. We're very good at contracting our musculature. We know how to make things tense. We're not as practiced as at releasing muscular tension. That's why we feel like we need to have a drink or smoke a joint or go to a massage therapist. We need to have someone help us. We can do it ourselves. We just need to practice. The face. 3, 2, 1, release. Zone 2, the top of the head. 3, 2, 1, release. Just turn the power off. Now you may say, I didn't feel anything. That's fine. You'll get better and better at it. Every muscle is the same. Muscles function the same all throughout the body. We're just more familiar with using some than others. We know how to make a fist and release a fist like that. But when's the last time you released the muscles at the top of your head? So tune in and see if you can experience the muscular tension and, more importantly, the change that occurs when you incrementally release the smallest amount of tension, the top of the head. 3, 2, 1, release, and you'll feel a slight sagging, dropping sensation. Okay? Take a deep breath. And by the way, you're going to feel a lot of impulses to take deep breaths. As you relax and release tension, your body sees it as an opportunity to catch up from the oxygen deficit that has been induced by all this muscular tension. So it's going to send you a lot of messages. I see it's okay to breathe now. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Okay? So the top of the head again. 3, 2, 1, release. The back of the head. 3, 2, 1, release. Now, when you're practicing these sessions on your own, and I hope you do, take a lot more time than I'm taking right now. I try to keep these sessions to about a half an hour, but you could take half an hour just on one muscle group. Sit and explore. The great thing is, you don't have to relax the entire body to induce a state of expansion, which will in turn expand your mind and bring you to this place of calm. You could work on one muscle group for 15 minutes, a half an hour. That will bring the same result. It's not all or nothing. What's important is that you practice muscular release. You can just do it in your hand. You could just do this for half an hour. What's happening is you're tuning in to the process of incremental muscular release. That process of bringing yourself from a state of tension into muscular release is the thing that's doing the work for you. That's what you want to get better at. That's what you want to study. That's why you want to practice, because you will get better and better and better at it. Zone 4 is the neck. 3, 2, 1, release. And you might feel your shoulders drop too. The interesting thing is as you release one muscle group, you might feel another group somewhere in your body release in sympathy with it. The body is a unit. It's one piece. It wants to act as a whole. We think of it as separate parts, but everything feels everything else. You relax the tension in your face, you might feel your leg relax. Don't be surprised. Again, you're discovering how your body works. You're discovering how this process of expansion works. You're becoming a connoisseur of muscular tension, and you'll begin to notice certain things. That's why I say you can work on one muscle group and it will affect the entire body. Zone 5, the shoulders, let them drop just a millimeter. 3, 2, 1, release. And again, just looking for that. I like to say it's a feeling of release, which is also a feeling of relief. Think about it. If you had to hold a 5-pound weight all day and you carried it around with you and someone finally said you could put that down, you'd go, oh, I've been carrying around this 5-pound weight in my hand all day. Why? Didn't need to. Same thing. You're carrying around muscular tension that you just don't need. So when you let it go, you'll probably feel a sensation of, oh, well, that's a relief. Why was I holding on to that tension? I didn't need that. Well, we do it out of fear. Our body instinctively protects us by tightening. And again, it's very difficult to let go of a contracted state because it's instinctively protecting us. So we must gently persuade it. We must gently, incrementally induce muscular release. The shoulders, 3, 2, 1, release. Now we're going to do them all together. The face, the top of the head, the back of the head, the neck, and the shoulders all at once. 3, 2, 1, release. Take a deep breath. Another. One more. 15 seconds of complete stillness and silence, and I mean completely still. And take a note of how far you move the dial. If you were at a 10, have you moved it to a 9? Have you moved it to an 8? Have you moved it further? It really doesn't matter, because any amount of release, any amount of expansion is a movement away from contraction. And it's important to remember that any amount of expansion moves you away from contraction. But it's good to note, because you want to start to register, how far have I moved it? Don't be in a hurry, don't be impatient, but just take note. We're building body awareness. Zone 6 is the chest down into the stomach and waist. 3, 2, 1, release. And again, the chest down into the stomach. Tune in to whatever muscular tension you might find there. And even if you don't find any, see if you can induce the smallest, most incremental release of whatever tension is there. 3, 2, 1, release. You'll feel a slight letting go. Take a deep breath. Zone 7 is the back down into the pelvis. 3, 2, 1, release. Turning off that switch. Again, the back down into the pelvis. 3, 2, 1, release. And you'll see me taking moments of silence, because what I'm doing is I'm literally studying those sensations. What did I feel? What change did I feel? The back into the pelvis. 3, 2, 1. A slight letting go. Now this can be really uncomfortable for some people, because we hold this tension as our security blanket in a way. Letting go means making ourselves vulnerable. It's letting go of control. Again, you've got your hand in that jar holding all of that walnut. You can't hold the walnut and have a free hand at the same time. You're going to have to let go. Float free. Float free. And see what it does for you. It will get easier. The further into an expanded state you move, the easier it gets to continue that expansion. The beginning is always the toughest. That's why we start with the deep breaths. It's a way of kind of jump-starting this expansive process. The final zone is zone 8, down the legs, across the knees, and into the feet. The feet are very important. We hold a lot of tension there. That's why it feels so good to get a foot massage. Also so scary. Some people can't even let people touch their feet. They hold so much tension there. So see if you can think about your feet. And if you're just doing this for the first time, don't be surprised if you're going, I can't do this. I don't know how to focus. I don't know how to feel my foot. I don't know how to. That's fine. It's new. It's something we just don't do. How many times a day do you focus on the tension in your body and deliberately try to release that tension? Very rarely. So it's okay. Give it time. 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day. But the more you practice, the better you will get at it. That's why I encourage it, and that's why I hold these what I call public sessions, to encourage you and to guide you if it's new and you're finding it challenging to do. Ultimately, you do it on your own, and you'll see how much benefit you get. So down the legs, across the knees, and into the feet. Just checking the clock. 3, 2, 1, release. And again, the feet. 3, 2, 1, release. And I snap the fingers again, because it's like you're turning off a switch. The power is on. Watch my hand. Power on. 3, 2, 1. Power off. You have such amazing capacity within yourself to control the muscular tension in your body. You just have to practice. Tune into how it feels, and tune into how it feels to have that control. We can do amazing things with our body. And I make reference to piano. I'm a huge piano aficionado. I don't play, but I just enjoy pianists. Amazing, because what they do with their hands is astounding. Classic pianists, they've trained their bodies to do that. You have incredible capacity within your body to control what you do. So this is something that I've decided to devote my time and energy to get better and better at this practice of incremental muscular release. Why? Because I've seen that by incrementally releasing the muscular tension in my body, It induces a deep state of relaxation and expansion, which in turn expands the muscular process of my brain, if you will, which is holding onto obsessive thoughts and feelings. It lets go and they float away, and I find myself in this place of incredible calm, clarity, stillness, peace, and joy. It's addictive. Once you get there, you're going to want to revisit it as often as you can. It feels good not just physically, but on a conscious level. You feel so comfortable with yourself when you've detached yourself from all the external processes, all the obsessive thoughts, all the compulsive feelings. When you detach yourself and come to a place of neutrality, you feel that it's just fine just being. You feel complete just existing. You don't feel like you need to chase things. You don't feel like you need to be on the internet, posting, tweeting. You don't feel like you need to be checking your phone. You don't feel like you need to be doing anything but just being. It's an incredible feeling of contentment, completeness, calm, stillness, peace. We all deserve to feel that way, at least once or twice a day. You can't feel that way all the time, obviously. But even if you're having a good time, if you're having a great life, it's nice to bring yourself to a place of neutrality, of quiet. Just listening. Just feeling the beat of your heart. Experiencing your own feelings and sensations. Not being tormented by obsessive thoughts and ideas, worries, anxieties. Just at peace. It's an incredible place to be. And again, we all deserve to be there. Not just for our state of mind, our state of consciousness, but for our health. Your blood pressure drops. Your injuries heal more quickly when you're relaxed. Everything is improved by being in a more relaxed, expanded state. So that's why we do it. So it's been a half an hour. I like to keep these sessions to a half an hour. By the way, anyone who ever has a question, feel free to private message me on Facebook or Instagram, whatever. I'm happy to answer any questions. But basically, that's what we're doing here. We're trying to move ourselves from a contracted state into an expanded state. We're focusing particularly on muscular release as a means to do that. We do the preliminary steps of squeeze, release, deep, deep breaths, followed by stillness and silence to sort of shock ourselves out of our contracted state. And then we go into the individual muscle groups to try to incrementally release that tension. I've just barely touched on it today. You could take as much time as you like if you want to continue today or at any given moment. But just remember that you don't have to be in a contracted state. You have ultimate control over your state of consciousness. All you have to do is decide and move yourself to this place of peace and calm and joy. That's it. I end every session, of course, with rule number 1, which is love yourself. That's one of the fundamentals. Love is very expansive. So you start by loving yourself. There is an infinite amount of love available in the universe. It's just there for you to take and give to yourself. Give as much as you want or can to yourself. And when you've given yourself so much that you're just filled up with self-love, then it's spilling over. You have extra. Pass it around to whoever's nearby. We could all use it. Okay, I'm going to repost this session on my Facebook page. It'll be up for 24 hours. I also posted on the Scanning Facebook page, SQANNING. If you like and follow that page, you'll get alerts whenever there's a new session. And there's also a YouTube scanning page. That's it for now. I try to be here as often as I can. Hopefully I'll be here tomorrow. In the meantime, again, have a great day. Take the time for yourself. Take the time to love yourself, give to yourself, enjoy yourself, find peace within yourself, and then go on and take on the challenges of your life with happiness, joy, and success. Take care. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.